When thinking of Pokemon cards, there's billions of cards printed, though there's a few products and cards that make a collection go from, oh yeah, that's cool, to wow, okay, this is insane. Now, not all Pokemon cards are created equal. Some are just cards and others are literally the backbone of legendary collections. And that's why in this video, I want to go over the 5 types of Pokemon collectibles that truly define a collection, and I feel every collector or investor should aspire to own. Now, the key word being here is aspire, because one thing that's the truth is that everyone's budgets and collection goals are unique, though that's why I've really thought about this list. But something to remember about Pokemon cards, it's kind of similar to getting trophies. Every collectible you own is like a trophy in your cabinet, but just like real trophies, they take time and dedication to earn. And one mistake that sometimes people can make is they can see these massive collections online that look impossibly valuable, and something that you actually need to remember is that most collectors didn't pay today's market prices for their collections. They bought earlier and then they just simply let time do the work. I mean, for the quickest example, take my Paldea Evolved booster box behind me, right? I grabbed that in 2023 for around 120 US. And at the time of recording this video, it's getting close to $500 a booster box. But I mean, hey, maybe you're watching this video like a year or 2 down the line. Who knows what the price of that Paldea Evolved booster box will be from then? But here's the thing to remember, I only paid $120 for it. That's why in this video, I think of every selection I've chosen as a goal that you should aspire for. Some of them will be really realistic, while others will take time to get there. And also, I wanted to say, hey, if you are a first-time viewer, welcome to the channel. My name's Phil, and I cover topics relating to Pokemon collectibles and Pokemon TCG. Definitely feel free to subscribe to stay in the know about Pokemon cards. So the first key collectible that everyone should aspire to own is a PSA 10 Grail from the modern collecting era. Now, when it comes to graded cards, my personal favorite to collect and invest in is PSA 10s. That's my own personal preference. And that's not because I'm like a PSA fanboy, but the reality is that PSA 10s have proven to have the largest buyer market available, along with having a very solid track record of being very liquid. Though I think a PSA 10 Grail card from the modern era is an excellent trophy piece for your collection, and they can definitely climb in price if chosen correctly. Now, here's the thing, the term Grails can be a little bit ambiguous because, one person could say, hey, Poncho Pikachu's, they're Grail cards, which is definitely true, but they're also very out of budget for a lot of collectors. For this example, a Grail I consider is any top chase card from a set. That means if you're thinking of Temporal Forces, it's Raging Bolt, and if you're thinking of Destined Rivals, it's the Mewtwo and so forth. The cool thing about these is how much they can climb as the years go on. I personally believe when purchasing any of these Grails, you should choose one that's personal to you. But if it is a high rarity and it's in a high grade and it has a personal connection to you, then that's usually a good choice. That's why when you try to piece these together, it's a very good idea to choose cards that are personal to you and that you love. Maybe you played Pokemon as a kid and then you have a favorite Pokemon and you want to collect that. If that's the case, they're the kind of cards I would be adding to my collections, and especially as a PSA 10, there's always the chance that these can rise, and of course they add a more personal level to collecting. I think one thing people can get wrong is they always just try to choose cards that they think are going to rise in price, but they have no personal connection to that Pokemon, or they don't even love the card. Now, I've made that mistake before as well, so if you've made that mistake, don't stress. I think that's a very common thing a lot of people do. But for me, if I do purchase a PSA 10 card, I'm always confident that even if the card completely tanked in value, I have a real good emotional detachment to it because I actually wanted it in my collection for the first place. So that's why, for that reason, you just want to take the time to tailor your purchases that are specific to you. Now, the second collectible to consider owning is a sealed modern booster box. So sealed products are great, and sealed collecting has become very popular. And honestly, when looking at booster boxes, they look great to display, and of course they contain 36 booster packs. Though the reason why these are so great to add to any collection is because of the historical performance of growth for sealed product. When you purchase a modern sealed booster box, you always have the chance to buy this at retail price or at least close to it. And even though the value may not move for a while, when we look at the history of sealed product, they really have been proven to grow. I mean, a quick look at Fusion Strike from 2021, and you can see how much the price has shifted. And the main reason for that is because when sealed product usually gets released, it's only released for a finite amount of time until Pokemon move on to the next set. So yes, it has a printing window that you can purchase it, but a lot of people like playing catch up. A lot of people like revisiting sets, and when that happens, they kind of go back and revisit and say, hey, you know what? what, I wouldn't mind adding that to my collection. So it's always awesome to see if you can get sealed modern booster boxes, though the best way to do it is try to get one at retail price. Like, the cool thing about owning a sealed modern booster box is once the print window exhausts itself, they just naturally become more desired. I mean, earlier in the video, I spoke about how collectibles appreciate over time, and a big mistake new collectors make is they try to play catch up. But the real secret is trying to purchase these products during their era, and you try to become part of that era. Now, these collectibles are awesome, and setting goals to obtain them is great, though something that's just important is your skincare, and that's why I'm proud to have partnered with Geology to bring you this sponsored video. Now, Geology is a 41-time award-winning skincare, hair, and body brand and has received over 10,000 5-star reviews, and they sent me a selection of their products to try, and honestly, I've been impressed. What I love about Geology is how easy it is for individuals who've never had a skincare routine pick it up. Every product shows you the steps and how to use it. For me, I start with the sensitive face wash, then I follow with the eye cream, which helps reduce any puffiness around my eyes, and I finish with the SPF 15 morning moisturizer. At the end of the day, I redo the face wash, and then I apply the night cream, which locks in hydration while I'm sleeping. Now, the best part is, if you want to use any of the products mentioned in this video, Geology is offering a free month trial this September. Use my link and code Phillips100 to get your personalized trial set, plus a free gift and up to 50% off add-ons. A massive thanks to Geology for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back into the list. Now, the third Pokemon collectible you should consider owning is a high-grade vintage card that you love. Now, the term high grade is relative because if we think of modern cards, there really isn't a thing known as a high grade because it's literally get a 10 or otherwise everything below that seems a little bit disappointing. I mean, most people know that PSA 9s are pretty much equal to the raw price of a card. I mean, even recently, sometimes a PSA 9 will sell for even less than a raw card, depending on the circumstances. Though when it comes to vintage, there's a few tiers of what constitutes a high grade. For example, for base set cards, a high grade would be an 8 or above. However, when we think of gold star cards, even a PSA 6 or a PSA 7 can be considered a high grade, depending on the pop reports. Though I think owning a PSA 8 or higher for a vintage card is an amazing purchase for any collection. I mean, for example, when looking at the 2001 Ho-Oh from Neo Revelation, at the time of recording this video, the PSA 9 has a pop report of around 583 copies available. When we compare that to the Charizard from Pokemon 151 in PSA 10, the Charizard currently has over 22,000 copies in PSA 10. So you can see the differences are huge, but not only that, you also need to remember how many more will be added within the next 10 years. With so much sealed Pokemon 151 products still out there, packs will continue to be opened for years, and it will feed a healthy flow of new PSA 10 Charizards into the population. In 10 years, I wouldn't be surprised if that population is 3 or 4 times larger than today. Though that vintage Ho-Oh is like a slow leaking faucet. Every now and then you will get drip fed another high grade PSA Ho-Oh slab, but the supply will barely shift and it will never outpace the demand. The flow is so slow, so finite, and can never compare to the flow of modern cards. So even though you may not be the biggest fan of vintage, I think vintage cards deserve a spot in every collector's collections for this reason. Sure, the art style's pale in comparison to modern cards, but we really can't forget their long-standing legacy and their history in collectibles. For this reason, vintage really does make a difference. One of the things I love most about old school vintage cards is just how finite the supply truly is. I mean, even if another massive vintage hype wave rolled through the hobby like it did in 2020 and 2021, it's very likely that the demand would exceed the supply. And the simple truth is that vintage cards just simply don't exist in large numbers anymore. And that scarcity is what makes them so special. And if there's anything I've learned about Pokemon cards, it's that they always recycle. It's like fashion, right? Sometimes certain trends are styling and then other times they're out. And there will be a time where vintage Pokemon cards become super desired again, though right now the pendulum is swinging towards modern at the moment. Now also, I did want to mention, if you do have questions relating to Pokemon cards or the hobby, feel free to join the massive Pokemon community on my channel's Discord. We have over 10,000 active members, and it's the quickest way to find out about live streams and announcements. The server invite is in the video's description. Now, the fourth Pokemon collectible that I believe is awesome to own is actually an early Pokemon video game. Now you may be thinking, wait, this isn't trading cards, Phil, what are you talking about? And yeah, you're right, but you know what? Old school Pokemon video games are amazing collectibles. One thing that's so interesting about Pokemon, dude, and when you really think about this in like a long kind of view across every single franchise and everything, like every single medium, right? Not just trading cards, but video games and everything. Now, they're nowhere near as good as a purchase if you're thinking about increasing in value as, you know, like trading cards are. But why Pokemon's so interesting? Like when you look at games like, you know, Kingdom Hearts or even Final Fantasy, they pale in comparison to Pokemon video game growth. So that's why I'm always actually confident in investing in collecting trading cards, because it's like, wait, if the video games of Pokemon even grow, it just makes sense for the trading cards as well. I think they're real great parts of Pokemon history. Like even when we look at the Nintendo DS games or even the GameCube games, they're definitely awesome collectibles and they are a big part of the history. One thing that a lot of people forget, we always look at the Pokemon cards, but sometimes a lot of collectors forget that, you know, it all started with the games. I always think that a great collectible for like a video game to own is one that you played yourself. You know, maybe you played Pokemon Yellow as a kid, maybe you played Pokemon Leaf Green or Fire Red, but then, you know, it got lost along the way. I always think that your favorite game should have a place in your collection. You can display it with your collectibles. And of course, even though the price growth isn't probably going to be anywhere near like trading cards, I don't think it's about that as well. I think, you know, if you are collecting the trading cards, it's always awesome to see kind of like where the whole heart of Pokemon came from. You know, a lot of people would agree that the Pokemon games are what made Pokemon become such a worldwide phenomenon. You know, everything that we love about the trading cards always gets announced first in the video games. Like for example, all the new Mega Evolutions that are coming out, you know, whether it was Dynamax or Gigantamax or anything of Terrestrialized, they all first come in the video games and then they come in the trading cards. So for that reason, I think they're an awesome collectible to own. Now, the fifth piece that I believe every collector should own in their collections is a Pokemon Center Elite Trainer Box. These are literally the golden modern products, and literally collectors are so obsessed with these. And I think the big reason why collectors like them is because they just get reprinted less. And I mean, even if there is a restock, usually there's strict limits to how many you can purchase, so they become a very desired collectible. Pokemon Center products, especially if we're looking at the recent ones from the Scarlet and Violet era, they've really gone up in price recently, and you know, they are very desired collectibles. I think a big reason why I like them is because of their exclusivity, and they're probably a more premium kind of Pokemon collectible you can own. One of the issue is they're very location centric. For example, I'm in Australia, so for me to get Pokemon Center products, I always have to pay far more than I would like to. You know, if you are in US or UK, they are far easier to get. But even if you do live abroad, it's something that you can consider. And you know, like I said earlier in the video, it's something you can aspire or put a goal towards to own. I definitely think that Pokemon Center products have become very popular collectibles. And of course, we all know that the reason why they're so in demand and so loved is because of the Pokemon Center promo cards that come inside each box. That little Pokemon Center stamp makes some cards become very sought after collectibles. But definitely these are a great piece to add to any Pokemon collection. But Pokemon collecting is an ever-changing field, though there's some real cool lessons to explore when it comes to Pokemon cards. Though it's funny because collectibles seem timeless in a way, and it kind of makes you wonder what advice actually is timeless in this hobby and it always stays the same. And in this video, I actually dive deep into the 7 timeless rules of Pokemon investing that never change. Once again, a big shout out to Geology for sponsoring today's video. You can find all the details of Geology in the video's description. If you want to learn more about Pokemon cards and collecting, click the video that's appearing on screen, and I'll see you on the next video.